Okay, so as we discussed about the SDLC, which is the software development lifecycle. So we discussed it like the SDLC will be having four different phases, which is the design, analysis, implement, and then test. So here, in detail, if you go at the different stages that are involved in the SDLC phase is first we need to plan the requirements, which is the stage one, planning and requirement analysis, and stage two, where we are going to define the requirements, and the stage three will be designing the product architecture, which is going to be handled by the solution architect team. And then the stage four is the building or developing the product. So where the technical leads or the dev team will be involved to develop the features, I mean, to develop the requirements that what we have shared to them. And then the stage five will be, so the QA team will be testing the product, and stage six will be deploying the product into the market. So this is already we discussed slide, and then this slide gives you in detail like what happens at the different stages, what we have discussed in the SDLC process. So the initiation, if you see the starting step, which is the initiation, which begins with a sponsor identifies a need or an opportunity or a concept and a proposal is created. So which is nothing but the business need or the business proposal, or we can say it as the scope of the project, which we are going to get it from the business, or we can say it as a client. Then followed by we have the system concept development. So what happens in this particular stage will be we will be defining the scope of the boundary of the concepts, which is nothing but defining the scope of the project. So what is the scope that this particular business project we are having? And then we need to identify like what will be the cost benefit analysis and the risk management plan. So this work will be done by the uh, project managers, and then the architecture team, the high level management team. So coming to the planning, so develops here also you can see the project manager will be involved in this phase when comes about the planning of the project. And now our journey starts with the requirements analysis. So where we are going to understand the client, the business needs and the requirements that what he had shared with us and which need to be implemented, and understanding the functionality of each requirement, that how it should be implemented and what is the expected functionality that it should work. So once the requirements analysis is done, then we will in the design phase. So we will convert these requirements into related artifacts like the BRD and FRS documents, which we have discussed. And now after preparing the requirement documents, so once we get the sign off from the client, then it will be moved to the development phase. So for the development phase, so once you share the BRD document or the FRS document to the client, so what you will be doing is like I mean, when you say like in the real-time implementation, say for example, if for the project that what I'm working, so I got the requirements sign up from the client. So so as per the project plan, so the development of the project should start from the first of, or you can say it as like yeah, the 1st of June. So before that, I need to share the requirement documents to the respective dev teams who are going to implement the project, which is the development team and the QA team. So what I need to do is like once I get the requirement documents signed off, then I will be scheduling a kickoff meeting, which will be stating like the agenda will be the project kickoff. So where I am going to explain what are the requirements that are mentioned in the document. In simple, like whatever the document or the BRD, the business requirement document, or the functional requirement specification, FRS documents that we have got the sign off from the client. So we are going to explain each and every statement or every sentence that is mentioned in the document. So we need to start explaining about what is the purpose, and then we need to explain starting with the scope, and then we need to give them like high level introduction, or we can say it as like a high level design. And then you need to explain each requirement and what is the expected functionality. So once we have the project kickoff meeting, so you will be explaining the requirements that you have mentioned in the document to both development and the QA team. So the development team, so obviously whatever the queries they have related to the functionality of a particular requirement, so they will raise the questions and we need to explain them and we need to resolve their issues, or we need to provide the solution to the queries that what they have. Until and unless if you are unable to understand, then or if you are not able to give the clear explanation or clear justification to the functionality or to the query that the particular team, whether it may be a dev or QA, then only we will make a note of that particular point, and then what is the query that the particular team member has raised and what is not mentioned in the document. So what you will see is like you will look at the query, say like if the particular functionality is something asking like the a calculation part, so you are not clear about the calculation part that it is mentioned in the document. So the one of the team member who is going to develop that functionality, so he wants some detailed understanding of the function calculation or the logical implementation of that particular requirement. So what we will do here is like, so we need to maintain the MOM, which is nothing but the minutes of meeting. So here in the minutes of meeting, what we will do is like we will mention all the attendees. I mean, whatever the meeting we have scheduled, we will include all those attendees and we will mention at the points that we are discussed and the statements or the requirements. Say, for example, if we discussed on the requirement R1 to R10, so R1 till R1 to R10, you need to mention like we already discussed in this particular call on the set of requirements starting from R1 to R10. And then you need to mention like on the particular requirement R6, there is a I mean, there is a query that has been raised from so and so development team member where we need to get some clear implementation of or clear understanding of the calculation that need to be implemented for this particular thing. And then who is going to take the responsibility? So for example, if Naveen is going to get that information and to share the development, so you need to mention like this has been assigned this particular task, like whatever the information or the clarification required for the particular query that has been raised by the team, you need to tag it to your name saying that Naveen will be getting the information required to it. And
Yeah.
this information, this MOM, I mean, this minutes of meeting, you need to share it to across all the team, including the dev, tech leads will be there, project manager will be there, solution architect will be there, and from QA team, there test lead will be there, and QA manager will be there, and the team members, and from also the development team, also from the maintenance or the implementation team, which we called as a who are going to deploy the project in the production or in the servers. So we need to include one of the team members from there and as well. So this information should be passed so that in the next meeting that what we are going to schedule, so in that you are going to discuss only on the requirement R6, where you need to give some clarification on the query that has been asked from the development team. So now your action is you need to go through the document which you have prepared or which is already you get the sign off from the client. So you need to go through the document and see the query that what the particular team member has raised, and you need to check whether that has been answered in the document or not, whether you have provided the clear explanation of how that particular calculation or the logical implementation is how to implement that. Do you have mentioned that particular steps in detail in the document or not? So once you go through the document, you will get some, because you are the person who prepared the document and who know, you are the person who know about the requirements, and you are the person who know about how does the requirement is going to function. I mean the functionality of the requirement. So now you will get the better understanding. Okay, these steps are not clear in my document. So what I need to do is I need to again go back to the business stating that one of the requirement at R6 where we have some calculation part. So in that, when we had a requirements walkthrough, or we can say it like the grooming sessions, when we are explaining the requirements to the dev and QA team. So we got the one of the question from our team members. So stating that in the particular implementation of the calculation, there is a query raised. So you need to get that addressed to the business, and if business can able to provide the solution, and you need to understand like what is the functionality that is missed in that particular requirement R6. So what are the additional steps that you need to add? And
Okay.
here now, okay, in the R6 requirement, you are adding few steps to implement, or to give some detailed information about the calculation part. Now, by adding these two steps into the requirement R6, do you have any impact to the already defined requirements, that is requirements from R1 to R5, and our requirements R7, R8, R9, and R10? You need to check like by adding these two steps, do we have any impact to the before implementing the requirement R6? We have R1 to R5, a set of requirements are there. So with this adding two steps, do we have any impact? If there is no impact, then it's good enough, and you need to move to the next one, which is R7, R8, and R9. You need to check whether do we need to update the requirements for R7, R8. So if there is no impact, then it would be straightforward. You just need to update the version of the document, saying like it's at the earlier version, which is approved, is V1. So now you need to maintain the version as V2, and then you need to mention like what is the change that has been added into the document. And then in that particular section requirement R6, you need to mention like what are the steps that you are adding. Say, for example, in this case, we don't have any impact to the already defined requirements. So now let's assume that if you have, after adding these two steps, then you need to modify or adjust the requirements which has been implemented for before R6, that is R1 to R5. So now you need to modify and adjust all the requirements R1 to R5 by adding these two steps in the R6. So now I mean, the BA and the client, the business will sit together, and we will discuss like, so if we add these two steps in the particular requirement, then we need to modify or update all the requirements which are already defined like R1 to R5 and then R7 to R10. So now they will understand, they will look over the impact, say how much impact that it will bring. So that's, do we need to rework, rewrite all the requirements, and do we need to update the functionality of each and every requirement? So keeping in that, now whatever the calculation part, that two new steps you are adding, so now the business will think like, so will it be an worthy of adding these two steps or adding this particular logic in my calculation, or he can simply maintain, say like it can be ignored, so that you are not going to add these two steps into the requirement R6, so that there won't be any modifications required into the total set of requirements which are defined from R1 to R10. So, and you need to mention to the client and to the member who raised a query on that, saying like the business would he don't want to have this particular functionality, or he don't want to have this calculation part to be implemented over this. And then you need to update the BRD, mentioning in the scope or in the change requirements, saying like these particular, as per the I mean as discussed, we are not going to consider this calculation part into the our requirements, or it will not come under into the part of the scope of project, which will be considered as out of the scope.
Mm.
So this is how you need to handle in the real time situation. So now what we are doing is like I'm just explaining the slides over there the theoretical way, and then I'm saying like you will be preparing a document which is a BRD or FRS. Now usually what will happen in real time? So now my BRD and FRS is approved. So what I need to do is like I need to schedule kickstart the project. So I need to schedule a project kickoff calls with the development on the QA teams, and then I need to explain the requirements. So that is how the process will be going on. Say you will be scheduling another call, which will be a follow-up call on this. Uh,
Mm.
what is the project kickoff? So in that you will say like I'll already have a discussed on this particular thing with the client, and these are the discussion points. So we don't want to have this functionality, or we don't want to put this calculation into this requirement, and
Okay.
that need to be communicated clearly, and it should be updated in clear with the sign off and with the approval from the business, and then it should be published across all over the teams. So that is how we would deal once we our requirement documents are approved.
Okay.
So now we have the the approaches like what we have discussed, like the software development methodologies. So we will be having different methodologies here. So the first one is Waterfall, which is a linear framework that is a step-by-step process, and then an incremental model is there, methodology or spiral. It is a model, and prototyping is one of the model, and rapid application development, which is also an iterative framework. So this is the SDLC when you talk about the waterfall model, incremental, and now the another new methodology that came into the development process is Agile methodology. So in Agile methodology, to implement the Agile manifestation, so Agile methodology, they will be having some Agile manifestation rules defined to the project. Now, uh, in the Agile methodology, we will be having the different process to implement that. Agile is the Scrum is one of the process, and extreme programming is one of the process, and then ASD, which is adaptive software development, and then the next one is the DSDM, which is dynamic system development method. So among all these process which we are going to implement the Agile methodology, so we are going to follow, I mean, most of the organizations, or we can say 99% of the companies, are going to follow the process called as Scrum. And
Okay.
when you come across to the development lifecycle methodology about the waterfall, incremental, spiral, prototyping, and rapid application development, so in this set of methodologies, most of the projects will follow the waterfall model. So
Oh.
to give you a clear understanding between this, a waterfall model is an old approach, or it is an old process of methodology to implement the projects, whereas the other agile methodology is the new version or the updated version of the waterfall model, which follows a different approach to implement the project. So
Okay.
that is the main difference between the waterfall and the agile methodology.
Oh.
So now we will understand what is the waterfall model. So if you see here, the waterfall model, the first stage starts with the requirements, followed by design and then implementation. And then you will be having the testing phase, and then the installation in the servers, and then we will be having the maintenance. So once the project is deployed into the market, and you will be providing the support to to the business, saying like you will be providing the maintenance period of around 2 years or 3 years to the project. So in between those 2 years or 1 year of time, if the project is having any issues, so that issues will be handled by the maintenance team. So Now, we already discussed about all these steps in our earlier sessions, like about the requirements phase, design phase, implementation, test and installation and maintenance. So now we will see how the waterfall model is going to work. So this
Okay.
is how the waterfall model process flow. You can have see the project start here and then the project release. So in between these, we will have the different phases, which is called the concept phase, requirements phase, high level design phase, detailed design phase, implementation phase, and the testing phase. So
Mm.
concept phase is nothing but the scope, what we are going to call it as like a scope document, or we will understand the scope or business proposal. And in the requirement phase, so you will discuss on the requirements and you will get the requirements implemented or requirements draft documented in the required artifacts or required templates. And then you will be having the high level design phase, which is followed high level design phase in the sense like you will be having a BRD, which is explaining about the business requirements. And in the detailed design phase, now you are going to explain the functionality of each and every requirement. So one thing we need to understand here clearly here is like we will be having two set of documents. One is the BRD and the second one is the FRS. So BRD is the business requirement document and FRS is the functional requirement specification document. BRD is a document which explains the requirement at the high level. So you will not explain in detail about how it is going to function or how it is going to, what are the different validations that you need to put to implement this particular requirement. Whereas the FRS document, the functional requirements specification document, which is more clear or a detailed document which explains the functionality and covering all the business rules and all the validations that need to be implemented for a particular requirement. So we will see in the detail, like what the difference between the BRD and FRS document, and then what are the different sections that the BRD document is having, and what are the different sections then the FRS document will be having. So when we move to our next sessions, like maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we are going to discuss on that BRD and FRS document templates.
Okay.
So now if you see here in this process, do you find anything anywhere like any difficulty or do you see any blocker in these particular phases like concept phase, requirements phase, high level design phase, detail phase, and implementation followed by testing phase? So each and every step is clear. You don't see any blockers over there. Like once the scope is clear, I mean, here, once the concept document or scope document is clear, then only you will be moving into the requirements phase. So in the requirements phase, you will be having the requirements document, which is the BRD document. So once this particular document is clear, I mean, which is approved and which is completed, then only you will be moved into the high level design. Say, for example, in the requirements document, so if you are not, the business is not clear about a certain requirements, so they need to again discuss with their SMEs and they need to provide some detailed information. So without having this requirements document, we are not allowed to move to the next phases, which is the high level design and then the detailed design, because this high level design document and the detailed design document were prepared based on the requirements document that what we have prepared. So now we have
Mm.
blocked in the requirements document phase itself. So in the requirements phase itself, we have the blocker. So we will not be moving to the next phases of the project. So now say, now what is the status of the project? So now we can say the project is on hold because the requirements are not clearly mentioned or clearly documented, or we can say like the requirements phase is not yet completed. So now the project is kept on hold. So are you clear till now, Anjani?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you see the strengths of waterfall model. So as we discussed, like It is an easy to understand, and everybody, even though the persons who are not having any experience, so they will be having a good understanding of how, I mean, they will be able to understand the structure of the process very easily. And you see the milestones here, like each of this phase will be calling as a milestone. So you will be clear on what are the different milestones we will be having in this particular process. And now we have the requirements, set of requirement stability, and we will have the good for management control, like for the planning, for staffing, and for resource planning, and then for tracking the progress or tracking the status of the project. And this project is, I mean, this methodology will also works well when we have when the client is more focused on the quality, and he is not much, very much restricted or not in detail about the schedule. Like he don't want to have put the deadlines to the delivery of the project. He wants to maintain the quality of the project, and he is also not concerned about the cost. Say if the project is going to be delivered within a 6 months, but he is not very much strict at the delivery timeline. So he wants the quality of the project should be clear, so that the delivery time may increase from 6 to 8 months. And if you move the schedule to when the schedule will be increased, then the cost of the project will also be increased, because both are sequentially aligned.
Okay.
So why the cost will increase? Because the development of the project has been increased from 6 months to 8 months. That is, whoever the members resources working on this project, they need to spend 60 days, or you can say some business working days, to implement the project. So their billing will be added. So that billing will be an additional cost to the earlier cost that has been defined to the project. So now you see here waterfall model deficiencies, and these will all the whatever the disadvantages that this particular waterfall model is having, these will be considered as an advantages, or these will be considered as a features for the Agile methodology. So whatever here we are lacking of, or here in this model we are failing of, so these points will be considered as the features of the Agile methodology. So the first one is all requirements must be known upfront. So which is, that is what here it mentioned, like in the concept or in the requirements document. So what are the total list of requirements that you are going to develop for the project? So the requirements that are covering to implement this project should be well known and should be documented in the earlier phase of the project itself.
Okay.
Okay, and see the deliverable created for each phase are considered frozen. Frozen in the sense like here, say freezed. So once if I'm say like if I'm moving from the requirements documentation phase to the high level design phase, it indicates that again I'm not going back to the requirement phase, and I'm not going to make any changes. So making like this is freezed, this particular phase is freezed, and then I'm moving to the high level design phase. So once my high level design phase is freezed, then only I'll move to the detailed design phase, where we will be having the followed by development or implementation of the project. So
Okay.
once the developmentation or the code is freezed, so you are not allowed to do any changes to the code, or you are not allowed to change any of the functionality of the particular requirement. Okay, and then you see here the third statement is that can give you a false impression of progress. Yes, so why it has been given the false impression of the progress? The statement that indicates here is like, say in the requirements phase, now we have say a list of R1 to R10, the total list of 10 requirements are there. So among the 10 requirements, you have got the required information from the business only on the set of 5 requirements. So where you have discussed on the functionality of how to implement those 5 requirements. to the client, and you are very familiar, and you get all the required inputs to implement or to document these five requirements, and you don't have the required information for the rest of the requirements, which is R6 to R10. So what we will do here? So we need to wait until we get all the requirements or information or the functionality of the requirements or the inputs that are required to implement or to document that particular requirement from R6 to R10. You need to wait until the second set of requirements also to be documented. Even though the requirements phase in the first R1 to R5 or documentation, or you can say it as the requirements elicitation process or the requirements discussion is already done in the month of May itself. But you didn't get the requirements about the requirement from R6 to R10. So you are not allowed to move to the next level phase, which is the high level design phase. So the dev team or the resources who are assigned to this project, they need to wait until all the set of requirements to be mentioned in clear. Then only we will move to the next phase. So that we means you can say like what is the status of this particular project. So now if someone asks like we have started the requirements process in the month of March, and now the month of May, when the project manager or when the delivery manager looks at the status of the project, they will see like the project chart will indicate like it is we are still in the requirements phase.
Okay.
But as per the project plan, we need to move to the high level design phase or to the detailed design phase. But as the requirements phase is not yet completed, so we are still working on the requirements part. So that gives a
Okay.
false impression like even though the project has started is after completing, it's already 3 months completed. Start date of the project is Feb 1. And now if you look at the project, now the current status of the project is we are still in the requirement phase. So which gives like
Okay.
someone will understand like there won't be any progress, or like the team or the resources who are assigned to this project will give to an impression like they are not working, they don't have any work to implement this project, or we can give the false impression to the teams saying like these teams are not working or they are not doing a quality amount of work, or they have been kept in idle with the work hours that have been assigned to them. Okay, so that is one of the problem. And then the integration is the one big bang. So we will discuss this integration part, and then the little opportunity for customer to preview the system. So the little opportunity for the customer to preview the system, we can mention this is also something like as a demo. Like once if the particular set of requirements is implemented, so the client wants to still see, we'll be having some eager waiting like how these requirements has been come into the picture, how the development has been done, and how the requirements or how the functionality is going to look. So that what we can say it is that initial review or giving a initial demo to the client will be delayed.
Okay.
So where we are at what is the scenarios that where we are going to use the waterfall model. So first thing is, so the requirements are very well known. So as we discussed, like from the requirements starting with R1 to R10. So if we have the information in detail about each requirement, like you are clear from R1 to R10 at all aspects, like we got the required inputs to implement or to document each of the requirement. So then, like the other teams who are assigned to the particular phases, so they will not be sitting idle. So the process moves you will see the progress of at the each and every phase of the project.
Okay.
So to implement, to follow this particular waterfall model, so we need to have these requirements should be very well known, and we should have the product definition. So we don't have, so the product definition should not be changed. Like we are not allowed to change any of the requirements functionality. So the product definition will not be changed. So we should remain standard, or there won't
Okay.
be any deviations in the scope of the project. So the technology is understood, like whatever the, say for example, in the R1 to R10 requirements, say R3, R4, R5 requirements are having the basic functionality where there won't be much calculation or much efforts required from the technology team. Whereas for to implement the requirement R8 and R9, there is having some logical implementation where in the particular to implement that particular logical the calculation part, we need to check which technology it supports, whether it supports, do the Java is having that particular features to implement this functionality, or does .NET is having that particular functionality, or can we able to implement that functionality using JavaScript. So we need to have a good understanding. I mean, the technology in the sense like the architect or the technical teams who are involved, they should be able to know like these features can be implemented using Java, or this functionality or this particular calculation or the logical implementation, we can implement this in using .NET. So that should be, well, we should be have the clear understanding on this particular technology that what we are going to use for this model. And
Okay.
so whenever you are going to implement any change in the requirement, that will be becoming as a new version of the existing product. So for the existing product, we are not going to make any changes. So the existing product version will remains as a V1. And the next, whatever the new feature or the new change in the requirement that you are doing, that will be coming as a new version, which is an like version 1.2 or version 2.0, something like that.
Okay.
And porting an existing product to a new platform, that is, we cannot take the existing product as to implement it is in a new platform, as because the existing project we are not sure like all the requirements that are implemented in the existing product are up to date, or they are following the latest process, or they're following the latest technology, because uh, every change in the requirement we will be considering it as a new version, so the product version will be increasing, so there is no porting of an existing product will be done. So you are going to use this waterfall model only when you are clear about all these things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you once again explain the porting an existing product?
Yeah, so porting an existing product is nothing but, say, for example, I am having the version, the initial version, say like alpha is my initial version of the project. So now to implement this project again, now my project is implemented using Java. So now it is going to be implemented in .NET. So can I make the existing product which is implemented in Java? Can I take the reference of the existing